Okay, y'all, so part 3 of this book, which is the last part of Clockwork Orange. Chapter 1, part 3. That's right. Part 3, chapter 1. Let's get it. It's gonna be a lot of reading. I'm gonna read at least 60 pages right now. What's it going to be then, eh? That's my brother's, was me asking myself. That my brother's was me asking myself the next morning, standing outside this white building that was like tacked onto the old staja, and my platties of the night of 2 years back in the gray light of dawn, with a malanky bit of a bag with my few personal veshes and a bit of cutter kindly donated by the Vani authorities to like start me off in my new life. The rest of the day before had been very tiring. What with interviews to go on a tape for the talent news and the photographs being too flash, and more like demonstrations of me folding up in the face of the ultra-violence and all that embarrassing cow. And then I had like fallen into the bed, and then as it looked to me, been waking up to be told to get off out to iddy off home. They did not want to viddy your humble narrator, never, not no more. Oh my brother, so there I was very, very early in the morning with just this bit of pretty Polly in my left Carmen, jangling it and wondering, what's it going to be then, eh? Some breakfast, some mesto, I thought, me not having eaten it all the morning. Every vec being so anxious that cocked me off out to freedom. A chasha of chai only I had peeded. This staja was in a very gloomy part of the town, but there were malanky workers' calves all around, and I soon found one of those, my brothers. It was very cali and vani, with one bulb in the ceiling, with fly dirt like obscuring its bits of light. And there were early rabbiters slurping away at chai and horrible-looking sausages and slices of kleb, which they woofed, going woof, 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 and then creaching for more. They were served by a very Cali Devaka, but with very bolshy grudies on her, and some of the eating vex tried to grab her, going ha 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 while she went he he he, and the sight of them near made me want too sick. Brothers, but I asked for some toast and jam and chai very politely, and with my gentleman's glass, and I sat in a dark corner to eat and peat. While I was doing this, a malanky little dwarf of vec iddied in, selling the morning's gazettas, a twisted and grazzling Prestupenic type with thick glasses on, with steel rims, his platties like the color of very starry decaying currant pudding. I competited a gazette, my idea being to get ready for plunging back into normal Jeesney again by viddying what was iddying on in the world. This gazette had seemed to be like a government gazette, for the only news that was on the front page was about the need for every vec to make sure he put the government back in again. To make sure he put the government back in again on the next general election, which seemed to be about 2 or 3 weeks off. There were very boastful slovas about what the government had done, brothers, in the last year or so, what with increased exports and a real horror show foreign policy and improved social services and all that cow. But what the government was really most boastful about was the way in which they reckoned the streets had been made safer for all peace-loving, night-walking loodies in the last 6 months. What with better pay for the police, and the police getting tougher with young hooligans, perverts, and burglars, and all that cow, which interesovated your humble narrator some deal. And on the second page of the Gazetta there was a blurry photograph of somebody who looked very familiar, and it turned out to be none other than me. I looked very gloomy and scared, but that was really with flash bulbs going pop pop all the time. What it said underneath my picture was that here was the first graduate from the new State Institute for Reclamation of Criminal Types, cured of his criminal instincts in a fortnight, only now a good law-fearing citizen and all that cow. Then I viddied there was a very boastful article about this Ludovico's technique and how clever the government was all and all that cow. Then there was another picture of some vec I thought I knew, and it was this minister of the inferior or interior. It seemed that he had been doing a bit of boasting, looking forward to a nice crime-free era in which there would be no more fear of cowardly attacks from young hooligans and perverts and burglars and all that cow. So I went and threw this gazetta on the floor so that it covered up stains of spilled chai and horrible spat gobs from the Cali animals that used this calf. What's it going to be then, eh? What it was going to be now, brothers, was home ways and a nice surprise for Dada and Mom, their only son and their heir back in the family bosom. Then I could lay back on the bed in my own malanky den and slushy some lovely music, and at the same time I could think over what to do with my jeezney. The discharge officer had given me a long list the day before of jobs I could try for, and he had telephoned to different vecs about me, but I had no intention, my brothers, of going off to Rabbit right away. A Malenki bit of a rest first, yes, and a quiet think on the bed to the sound of loving music. And so the autobus to Center, and then the autobus to Kingsley Avenue, the flats of flat block 18A being just near. You will believe me, my brothers, when I say that my heart was going clop, clop, clop with a like excitement. All was very quiet. It was still being early winter morning, and when I eddied into the vestibule of the flat block, there was no vec about, only the Nagoy vecs and chinas of the dignity of labor. What surprised me, brothers, was the way that had been cleaned up. There being no longer any dirty ballooning slovels from the rots of the dignified laborers, nor any dirty parts of the body added to their naked plots by dirty-minded penciling mail kicks. And what also surprised me was that the lift was working. It came purring down when I pressed the electric knopka, and when I got in, I was surprised again to vidi all was clean inside the light cage. So up I went to the 9th floor, and there I saw 10-8 as it had been before, and my rooker trembled and shook as I took out of my Carmen the little glooch I had for opening up. But I very firmly fitted the glotch in the lock and turned and opened up and went in. And there I met 3 pairs of surprised and almost frying glasses looking at me, and it was P and them having their breakfast, but it was also another vec that I had never viddied in my jizney before. A bolshy thick vec in his shirt and braces, quite at home, brothers, slurping away at the milky chai and munching at this eggy wag and toast. And it was this stranger vec who spoke first, saying, "Who are you, friend? Where did you get hold of a key? Out before I push your face in. Get out of here and knock. Explain your business, quick." My dad and mom sat like petrified, and I could viddy they had not yet read the Gazetta. Then I remembered that the Gazetta did not arrive till Papa had gone off to his work. But then Mom said, "Oh, you've broken out. You've escaped. Whatever shall we do? We shall have the police here. Oh, you bad and wicked boy, disgracing us like this." And believe it or kiss my shari, she started to go boo-hoo, so I started to try and explain they could ring up the staja if they wanted. And all the time the stranger vec sat there like frowning and looking as if he could push my litzo in with his hairy, bolshy, beefy fist. So I said, "How about you answering a few, brother? What are you doing here and for how long?" I didn't like the tone of what you just said then. Watch it. Come on, speak up. He was a working man type vec, very ugly, about 30 or 40, and he sat now with his rod open at me, not governing one single slavo. Then my dad said, "This is all a bit bewildering, son. You should have let us know you were coming. We thought it would be at least another 5 or 6 years before they let you out. Not," he said, and he said it very gloomy, "not that we're not very pleased to see you again, and a free man too." "Who is this?" I said. "Why can't he speak up? What's going on in here?" "This is Joe," said Mom. "He lives here now. He's a lodger. That's what he is." "Oh, dear, dear, dear," she went. "You said this, Joe. I've heard all about you, boy. I know what you've done, breaking the hearts of your poor grieving parents. So you're back, eh? Back to make life a misery for them once more. Is that it?" My own commentary. Shut up, Joe. "Over my dead corpse you will, because they've let me be more like a son to them than like a lodger." I could nearly have smacked loud at that if the old raz-draz within me hadn't started to wake up the feeling of wanting to be sick, because this vec looked about the same age as my P in him, and there he was like trying to put a son's protecting rook around my crying mom. Oh, my brothers. "So," I said, and I nearly felt like collapsing and all tears myself. "So that's it then? Well, I'll give you 5 large minutas to clear all your horrible Cali veshes out of my room." And I made for this room, this vec being a malenki bit too slow to stop me. When I opened the door, my heart cracked to the carpet, because I viddied it was no longer like my room at all. Brothers, all my flags had gone off the walls, and this vec had put up pictures of boxers, also like a team sitting smug with folded rookers and a silver-like shield in front. And then I viddied what else was missing. My stereo and my disc cover were no longer there, nor was my locked treasure chest that contained bottles and drugs and 2 shiny, clean syringes. "There's been some filthy Vonnie work going on here," I creaked. "What have you done with my own personal veshes, you horrible bastard?" This was to this Joe, but it was my dad that answered, saying, "That was all took away some by the police. This new regulation, see, about compensation for the victims. I found it very hard not to be very ill, but my gulliver was aching shocking, and my rot was so dry that I had to take a scory swig from the milk bottle on the table." So that this Joe said, "Filthy piggish manners," I said, "but she died, that one died." "It was a cat, son," said my dad, like sorrowful. that were left for nobody to look after them till the will was read, so they had to have somebody in to feed them. So the police sold your things, clothes and all, to help with looking after them. That's the law, son, but you were never much of a one for following the law. I had to sit down then, and this Joe said, "Ask permission before you sit, you mannerless young wine." So I cracked back scory with a "Shut your dirty big fat hole, you," feeling sick. Then I tried to be all reasonable and smiling for my health's sake, like. So I said, "Well, that's my room, there's no denying that. This is my home also. What suggestions have you, my P&M, to make?" But they just looked very gloom, my mom shaking a bit, her lids all lines and wet with like tears, and then my dad said, "All this needs thinking about, son. We can't very well just kick Joe out. Not just like that, can we? I mean, Joe's here doing a job, a contract it is, 2 years. And we make like an arrangement, didn't we, Joe? I mean, son, thinking you were going to stay in prison a long time in that room going begging." He was a bit shamed. You could vidi that from his litso, so I just smiled and like nodded, saying, "I vidi y'all. You got used to a bit of peace. You got used to a bit of extra pretty Polly. That's the way it goes. And your son had just been nothing but a terrible nuisance." And then my brothers believe or kiss my sharies. I started to like cry, feeling very like sorry for myself. So my dad said, "Well, you see, son, Joe's paid next month's rent already. I mean, whatever we do in the future, we can't say to Joe to get out, can we, Joe?" Then Joe said, "It's you two I've got to think of, who've been like a father and mother to me. Would it be right or fair to go off and leave you to the tender mercies of this young monster who has been like no real son at all? He's weeping now, but that's his craft and artfulness. Let him go off and find a room somewhere. Let him learn the error of his ways, and that a bad boy like he's been doesn't deserve such a good mom and dad as what he's had." "All right," I said, standing up and all like tears still. "I know how things are now. Nobody wants or loves me. I've suffered and suffered and suffered, and everybody wants to go on suffering. I know. Everybody wants me to go on suffering, I know. You've made others suffer," said this Joe. "It's only right you should suffer proper. I've been told everything that you've done sitting here at night and around the family table, and pretty shocking it was to listen to. It made me real sick a lot. It made me real sick, a lot of it did. I wish," I said, "I was back in the prison, dear old Stage as it was. I'm idioting off now," I said. "You won't ever vidi me no more. I'll make my own way. Thank you very much. Let it lie heavy on your consciences," my dad said. "Don't take it like that, son." And my mom just went boo-hoo-hoo, her lips all screwed up real ugly, and this Joe put his rook around her again, patting her and going there, like Bazoomy. And so I just sort of staggered to the door and went out, leaving them to their horrible guilt. Oh, my brothers. It's like victim mentality. That's something like, that's something I want to say a child will do, a kid will do, but oh my God. I'm on chapter 2 now, so let me read this. Let me drink this coffee. But idioting down the street in a like aimless sort of way, brother. I'm thinking about my daughter because last night she like pretends like I wasn't even yelling at her. I was telling her to go to sleep. I was about to turn the TV off in her room for some reason. And then she starts like, "I'm gonna go to grandma's room," because I want her to go to sleep already. And then she goes to my mom's room and like talks her baby talk. And for some reason, she got this point across to my mom. I heard my mom saying like, "Oh, she's what happened? What's dad doing?" "He's yelling at me." Or like for some reason, my mom I guess she thought she heard from my daughter, "Your dad's yelling at you?" And I guess, so she asked my daughter, "Your dad's yelling at you?" What's my daughter gonna say? "Yeah." So I go in there like 5 or 10 minutes later, and she's all cuddled up with my mom. I'm like, what? Little kid, dude. I wasn't even yelling at her. She acts like she has it so difficult, man. I love that little kid. Chapter 2, though. Idioting down the street in a like aimless sort of way. I hope this guy gets a job and stays out of trouble, man. Or appreciates his family at least and just doesn't get in trouble. Idioting down the street in a like aimless sort of way, brothers, in these night platties which Ludies like stared at as I went by. Cold too, it being a bastard cold winter day. All I felt I wanted was to be away from all this and not to have to think anymore about any sort of ish at all. So I got to the to the center. When I walked back to Taylor Place, and there was the disc boutique Melodia I had used to favor with my inestimable custom, oh my brothers, and it looked much the same sort of a mess though as it had always had. And walking in, I expected to video old Andy there, that bald and very, very thin, helpful-like Vec from whom I had coveted discs in the old days. But there was no Andy there now, brothers, only a scream and creech of a natsat, teenage that is, milk chicks and petites slushing some new horrible pop song and dancing to it as well. And the Vec behind the counter was not much more than a natsat himself, clicking his rooker bones and smecking like Bazoomy. So I went up and waited till he deigned to notice me. Then I said, I'd like to hear a disc of the Mozart number 40. I don't know why that should have come into my Gulliver, but it did. The counter Vec said, 40 what, friend? I said, Symphony number 40 in G minor. Ooh, went one of the dancing natsats and Malkik with his hair all over his glasses. Seem funna. Don't it seem funny? He wants a symphona. Oh, symphony? I could feel myself growing all razdraz within, but I had to watch that, so I smiled at the Vec who had taken over Andy's place and at all the dancing and screeching natsats. This counter Vec said, you go into that listen booth over there, friend, and I'll pipe something through. So I went over to that Malenki box where you could sluice the disc you wanted to buy, and then this Vec put a disc on for me. But it wasn't the Mozart 40, it was a Mozart Prague, seemingly having just picked up any Mozart he could find on the shelf. And that should have started making me real razdraz, and I had to watch that for fear of the pain and sickness. But what I'd forgotten was something I shouldn't have forgotten, and now made me want to snuff it. It was that these Dr. Brockneys had so fixed things that any music that was like for the emotions would make me sick, just like bidding or wanting to do violence. It was all because all those violence films had music with them, and I remembered especially that horrible Nazi film with the Beethoven Fifth last movement. And now here was lovely Mozart made horrible. I dashed out of the box like Bazoomy to get away from the sickness and pain that were coming on, and I dashed out of the shop with these natsats smacking after me and the counter Vec creeching, but I took no notice and went staggering almost like blind across the road and round the corner to the Korova milk bar. I knew what I wanted. The mesto was near empty, it being still morning. It looked strange too, having been painted with all red mooing cows, and behind the counter was no Vec I knew, but when I said milk plus large, the Vec with the lean lids so very newly shaved knew what I wanted. I took the large Malaco plus to one of the little cubbies that were all around this mezzo, there being like curtains to shut them off from the main mesto, and there I sat down in the plushy chair and sipped and sipped. When I'd finished the whole lot, I began to feel that things were happening. I had glasses fixed on a Malenki bit of silver paper from a cancer packet that was on the floor. The sweeping up for this mesto not being all that horror show, brothers. This scrap of silver began to grow and grow and grow, and it was so bright and fiery that I had to squint my glasses at it. It got so big that it became not only this whole cubby I was lolling in, but like the whole Korova, the whole street, the whole city. Then it was the whole world, and it was the whole everything, brothers, and it was like a sea washing over every veg that had ever been made or thought of even. I could sort of slushy myself, making special sort of shrooms and governing slovels like dear dead idlewalds, rot not in varying guises, and all that cow. And I could feel the vision beating up in all this silver, and then there were colors like nobody had ever vidded before, and then I could viddy like a group of statues a long way off that was like being pushed nearer and nearer and nearer, all lit up by very bright light from below and above alike. Oh, my brothers, this group of statues was of God, or of Bog, and all his holy angels and saints, all very bright like bronze, with beards and bolshy great wings that waved about in a kind of wind, so that they cannot really be of stone or bronze, really, and the eyes of glasses like moved and were alive. These bolshy big figures came nearer and nearer till they were like going to crush me down, and I could slushing my glass going and I felt I had got rid of everything, Platty's body, brain, name, the lot, and felt real horror show like in heaven. Then there was a shoom of light grumbling, and Bog and the angels and saints sort of shook their Gullivers at me as though to cover it that there wasn't quite time now, but I must try again. And then everything like leered and smacked and collapsed, and the big warm light grew like cold, and there I was as I was before. The empty glass on the table and wanting to cry, feeling like death was the only answer to everything. So I feel like the mesto was near empty, being black curtains to shut off from the main mesto, and there I sat down in the plushy chair and sipped. When I finished the whole lot, I began to feel that things were happening. When he finished his drink, he began to feel that things were happening. I had my glasses fixed on a Malenki bit of silver. I had my I had my glasses like fixed on a malenky bit of silver paper from a cancer packet that was on the floor. So a little something shiny coming from a cigarette packet. The sweeping up of this mess, though not being all that horror show, brothers. The scrap of silver began to grow and grow and grow and was so like bright and fiery. So he got so focused. This group of statues was of God, so he got stuck on something. But then at the end he's saying something about crying, feeling like death was the only answer to everything. So wow, this book. I don't know if you would really catch it if you read it at a different part of your life, or this book if you happen to wow, this writer says that this boy had like some sort of awakening. So you know, he tried to go get some music, but he couldn't like music no more because of that situation he went through. Then he goes back, you know, to some place to get some chai tea, maybe like not a bistro, maybe just some, you know, cafe of some sorts to get where they could get coffee or something. So, or he goes to a milk bar. So then he's sitting there in some place where you could like section off yourself, you know, with just a curtain, which seems pretty dope. But that his eye got caught up something shiny. So this, you can only imagine how he's feeling, like coming home from prison after 2 years, being a kid, feeling like you've changed, and like even at the table trying to just continue to remember where you don't want to go back to, or just being, you know, just, I guess they calling it being sick, but it's just more, he just changed. Like you can tell he's changed in him, but it just still what happened. You know, it's not his family's fault. They didn't think he was gonna come home for more than half of a decade, you know. So they rent the room out. The guy's kind of annoying, but he is looking out for the parents, the one that's been renting the room. He also doesn't want to lose his spot, but I mean, I don't know, I guess he is just kind of looking out for the parents, you know, for what their son has put him through, you know. I mean, the kid did kill an old lady, so it's pretty crazy. But it just, for the writer, for the author to put in this moment where he just has this like awakening and stuff, and that was it, and that was what I vidied quite clear was the thing to do, but how to do it I did not properly know, never having thought of that before. So he just like feeling like low. He's feeling low, but he has a little bit of money, so he goes get himself a chai tea. He doesn't know what the hell he's gonna do next, so he just focuses on, he's like stuck. You ever been like that, where you just, maybe at home or something, you've been through something with a family members or something, or and you're just stuck on something, like you feel low, like you have nowhere to go, nothing to do. Man, this book reminds me a lot of myself. And that was it. And that was what I vidied quite clear was the thing to do, but how to do it I did not properly know. I feel like he got the wrong idea about him being stuck and looking at something shiny and thinking about God and stuff like that. I think he just changed. Now he has to just realize and accept where his life's at and know it's not the end. And even if he has to be homeless and have no money, as long as he's not on drugs, as long as he's not hurting anybody, you know what I'm saying? You know? I hope he could grasp that at least until he could get back on his feet and feel comfortable enough to be a normal person in society. And that was it. That was what I vidied quite clear was the thing to do. But how to do it, I did not properly know, never having thought of that before. Oh, my brothers, in my little bag of personal veggies, I had my cutthroat britva, but at once felt very sick as I thought of myself going swish on myself and on my own red Croby flowing. What I wanted was not something violent, but something that would make me feel like just go off gentle to sleep, and that'd be the end of your humble narrator. No more trouble to anybody anymore. Perhaps I thought if I ate it off to the public biblio around the corner, I might find some book on the best way of snuffing it with no pain. I thought of myself dead and how sorry everybody was going to be, peeing them, and that Carly Vonnie Joel who was like a usurper, and also Dr. Brodsky and Dr. Branham and that inferior interior minister and every else, and the boastful Vonnie government too. So out I scattered into the winter, and it was afternoon on near 2 o'clock as I could vidi from the Bolshoi Center timepiece, so that me being in the land with the old Malaco plus must have took a lot longer than I thought. I walked down Margarita Boulevard and then turned into Boothby Avenue, then round the corner again, and there was the public biblio. It was a starry-colly sort of mess, though, that I cannot remember going into since I was a very, very malenki malkick, no more than about 6 years old, and there were two parts to it. One part to borrow books, and one part to read in, full of gazettas and mags, and like the vaunt of very starry old men with their plots stinking of like old age and poverty. These were standing at the gazetta stands all around the room, snuffling and belching and governing to themselves, and turning over the pages to read the news very sadly, or else they were sitting at the tables looking at the mags and pretending too, some of them asleep and one or two of them snoring and real grumpy. I couldn't remember what it was I wanted at first, then I remember with a bit of shock that I had idiot here to find out how to snuff it without pain. So I gullied over to the shelf full of reference veshes. There were a lot of books, but there was none with the title, brothers, that would really do. There was a medical book that I took down, and when I opened it, it was full of drawings and photographs of horrible wounds and diseases, and that made me want to sick just a bit. So I put that back and then took down the big book or Bible, as it was called, thinking that might give me like a comfort as it had done in the old Staja days. Not so old really, but it seemed a very, very long time ago, and I staggered over to a chair to read in it. But all I found was about smitting 17 times 7 70 times 7, and a lot of Jews cursing and talk-hocking each other. And that made me want it sick too, so then I near cried, so that a very starry, ragged mooj opposite me said, "What is it, son? What's the trouble?" "I want to snuff it," I said. "I've had it, that's what it is. Life's become too much for me." A starry reading vag next to me said, "Shh," without looking up from some Bazumni mag he had full of drawings of like bullshit geometrical veshes. That ring a bell somehow. This other smooch said, "You're too young for that, son. Why, you got everything in front of you." "Yes," I said, bitter, like a pair of false Grudies. This mag reading vag said, "Shh," again, looking up this time, and something clicked for both of us. I pitied who it was, he said, real grumpy. "I never forget a shape, by God. I never forget the shape of anything, by God. You young swine, I've got you now." Crystallography, that was it. That was what he'd been taking away from the biblio that time. False teeth crunched up real horror show, platies torn off, his books raz-rezzed all about crystallography. I thought I had best get out of here real scory, brothers, but this starry old mooj was on his feet, creaching like Bazumi to all the starry old coffers at the gazettas round the walls, and to them dozing over mags at the tables. "We have him," he creached, "the poisonous young swine who ruined the books on crystallography, rare books, books not to be obtained ever again anywhere." This had a terrible mad shum about it, as though this old Vec was really off his Gulliver. "A prize specimen of the cowardly, brutal young," he creached, "here in our midst and at our mercy. He and his friends beat me and kicked me and thumped me. They stripped me and tore out my teeth. They laughed at my blood and my moans. They kicked me off home, dazed and naked." All this wasn't quite true, as you know, brothers. He had some platies on. He hadn't been completely Nagoy. I creached back. "That was over 2 years ago. I've been punished since then. I've learned my lesson. See over there, my picture's in the papers." "Punishment, eh?" said one starry like ex-soldier type. "You lot should be exterminated like so many noisome pests. Punishment, indeed." All right, I said. "Everybody's entitled to his opinion. Forgive me all. I must go now." I started to idiot out of this mess of Bazumni, old man. Aspirin, that was it. You could snuff it on 100 aspirin from the old drugstore, but the crystallography vet creached. All right, I said. "Everybody's entitled to his opinion. Forgive me all. I must go now. Forgive me all. I must go now." And I started to idiot out of this mess though. Bazumni old man. Aspirin, that was it. You could snuff it on 100 aspirin. Oh, he's talking about killing himself on an aspirin from the old drugstore, but the crystallography vet creached. "Don't let him go. We'll teach him all about punishment. The murderous young pig. Get him and believe it, brothers, or do the other vesh." 2 or 3 starry daughterers about 90 years old apiece grabbed me with their trembling old rookers, and I was like made sick by the vaunt of old age and disease which came from these near-dead mooges. The crystal vec was onto me now, starting to deal me malenki weak tolcocks on my litso, and I tried to get away and idiot out, but these starry rookers that held me were stronger than I had thought. Another starry vex came hobbling from the gazettas to have a go at your humble narrator. They were creaking veshes like, "Kill him, stamp on him, murder him, kick his teeth in," and all that cow, and I could vidi what it was clear enough. It was old age having a go at youth, that's what it was. But some of them were saying, "Poor old Jack, near killed poor old Jack, he did this as a young swine," and so on, as though it had all planned yesterday. Which to them I suppose it had. There was now like a sea of vani, runny, dirty old men trying to get at me with their light, feeble rookers and horny old claws, creaching and panting onto me. But our crystal drug was there in front, dealing out tollcock after tollcock, and I daren't do a solitary single vesh. Oh, my brothers, it being better to be hit at like than better to be hit at like that than to want to sick and feel that horrible pain. But of course the fact that there was violence going on made me feel that sickness was peeping around the corner to video whether to come out into the open and roar away. Then an attendant Vec came along, a youngish Vec, and he creached, "What goes on here? Stop it at once. This is a reading room," but nobody took any notice, so the attendant Vec said, "Right, I shall phone the police." So I creached, and I never thought I would ever do that in all my jizny. Yes, yes, do that. Protect me from these old madmen. I noticed that the attendant Vec was not too anxious to join in the drat scene and rescue me from the rage and madness of the starry Vec's claws. He just scattered off to his office or wherever the telephone was. Now these old men were panting a lot now, and I felt I could just flick at them and they would fall all over. But I just let myself be held, very patient, by these starry rookers, my glasses closed, and feel the feeble tollcocks on my lids. So also Slushy, the panting breathy old Colossus screeching, "Young swine, young murderer, hooligan, thug, kill him." Then I got such a real painful tollcock on the nose that I said to myself, to hell, and I opened my glasses up and started a struggle to get free, which was not hard, brothers, and I tore off creaching to the sort of hallway outside the reading room. But these starry avengers still came after me, panting like dying, with their animal claws all trembling, to get at your friend and humble narrator. Then I was tripped up and was on the floor and was being kicked at. Then I slushy galosses of young vets creeching, all right, stop it now." I knew the police had arrived. The whole people were beating him up. But, oh, man. This is a good book to give to, like, a young child, you know? Because a young child, if they see you reading it, they'll probably want to read it. But even if you have, like, a young homie or something, I know this kid was supposed to be 15, but he's 17 now, so you could give this to a 17-year-old. You know, I think this is a good book to read in high school, so you could teach, like, look at karma. Good thing it wasn't like he didn't run into some young people that remember some shit he did in the past. They would have really hurt him, you know? So, like, that's real. You know, you got to be careful. There's some good stuff in this book, man. It's crazy when I was taking it for granted. Now I'm trying my best right now to appreciate it so you guys could appreciate it. I can easily go over it, but right now I'm kind of performing for you guys in a sense, but I am being myself fully. As you can see, I'm pretty faded and my eyes are low. But my back is kind of hurting. I don't really need socks to just walk up the hill. I really just want to walk, but I don't know if I'm gonna just walk. It's already past 10 o'clock, I'm sure, and looks like, man, people either work at night or working from home right now or something. A lot of people going hiking right here. And what is it, Thursday? It's Thursday, so it's during the day. Let me get some coffee real quick. I'm on chapter 3, so I was like in the first, you'll see in some of the videos of the first parts, you know, in the beginning of the book, like reading, like you're trying to figure out how the author writes. Like now I kind of get his language now, reading, I kind of get his language, you know? And I've captured it. I've begun to understand his way of writing. And so, you know, I was smoking faded and I was like, damn, these little kids are doing bad shit, you know, and they're hurting people. And I was like reading it, and so I was kind of going through these little anxieties reading this fucking book because it was pretty violent in the beginning. And now he's like on the other side of the dust settling, you know, getting out of prison after 2 years, and like, you know, like even how he's describing some of the other characters, how they're like, don't see from his point of view, you know, they don't see it from his point of view, you know. I could say he's more humble now. Prison made him more humbled, or whatever, that type of psychology they gave to him made him more humble. I was like dazed, oh my brothers, and could not vidi very clear, but I was sure I had met these Millicents some mesto before. The one who had hold of me going there, just by the front door of the public biblio, him I did not know at all, but it seemed to me he was like very young to be a Roz. But the other two had backs that I was sure I had vidied before. They were lashing into the starry old Vex with great bolshy glee and joy, swishing away with my lanky whips, screeching, "There, you naughty boys, I should teach you to stop rioting and breaking the state's peace, you wicked villains, you." So they drove these panting and wheezing and near-dying starry avengers back in the reading room. Then they turned round, smacking with fun they had to vidi me, the older one of The two said, well, 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 well. If it isn't little Alex. Very long time no viddy, Drew. How goes? I was like dazed, the uniform and the schlemm or helmet making it hard to viddy who this was, though. Litzo and Galas were very familiar. Then I looked at the other one, and about him with his grinning Bazoomi Litzo, there was no doubt. Then all numb and growing number, I looked back at the wailing one. This one was then fatty old Billy Boy, my old enemy. The other was, of course, Dim, who had used to be my droog, and also the enemy, a stinking fatty goatee Billy Boy, but was now a Millicent with uniform and schlemm and whip to keep order, I said. Oh no. Surprise, eh? And old Dim came out with the old guff I remembered so horror show. Ha ha ha. It's impossible, I said. It can't be so. I don't believe it. Evidence of the old Glazzies, grinned Billy Boy. Nothing up our sleeves. No magic, Droog. A job for two who are now of job age, the police. You're too young, I said. Much too young. They don't make roses of malkicks of your age. Was young, went old Millicent Dim. I cannot get over it, brothers. I really cannot. That's what we was, young, Droogie. And you it was that was always the youngest. And here now we are. I still can't believe it, I said. Then Billy Boy Roz, Billy Boy, that I couldn't get over, said to this young Millicent that was like holding on to me and that I did not know. More good would be done, I think, Rex, if we doled out a bit of the old summary. Boys will be boys, as always was. No need to go through the old station routine. This one here has been up to his old tricks, as we can well remember, though you, of course, can't. He has been attacking the aged and defenseless, and they have properly been retaliating, but we must have our say in the state's name. What is all this, I said, not able hardly to believe my okus. It was them that went for me, brothers. You're not on their side, it can't be. You can't be, Dim. It was a Vec we fillied with once in the old days, trying to get his own Malenki bit of revenge after all this long time. Long time is right, said Dim. I don't remember them days too horror show. Don't call me Dim no more either. Officer, call me. Enough is remember, though, Billy Boy kept nodding. He was not so fatty as he had been. Naughty little malkicks, handy with cutthroat brifters. These must be kept under. And then took me in a real strong grip and walked me out of the biblio. There was a Millicent patrol car waiting outside, and this vet called Rex was the driver. They toe-cocked me into the back of this auto, and I couldn't help feeling it was all really like a joke, and that Dim anyway would pull his schlemm off his Gulliver and go ha ha ha, but he didn't. I said, trying to fight the strack inside me. And old Pete, what happened to old Pete? It was sad about Georgie, I said. I slushed all about that. Pete, oh yes, Pete, said Dim. I seem to remember like the name. I could video we were driving out of town. I said, where are we supposed to be going? Billy Boy turned around the front to say, it's light still, a little drive into the country, all winter bare, but lonely and lovely. It is not right, not always, for ludies in the town to vity too much of our summary punishment. Streets must be kept clean in more than one way, and he turned to the front again. Come, I said, I just don't get this at all. The old days are dead and gone days. For what I did in the past, I have been punished, I have been cured. That was read out to us, said Dim. The super read all that out to us. He said it was very good way. Read to you, I said, and my lanky Benassi. You still Dim to read for yourself. Oh, brother. Ah, no, said Dim, very little, like gentle and like regretful. Not to speak like that, not no more, Droogie. And he launched a bullshit toe-cock right on my glove, so that all red rose Crovey started to drip, drip, drip. There was never any trust, I said, bitter wiping off the Crovey with my rooker. I was always on my Adinaki. This will do, said Billy Boy. We were now in the country, and it was all bare trees and a few odd distant like twitters, and in the distance there was some like farm machine making and wiring shoom. It was getting all dusk now, this being the height of winter. There were no ludies about, nor no animals. There was just the four. Get out, Alex, boy, said Dim. Just a Malenki bit of summary. All through what they did, this driver Vic just sat at the wheel of the auto, smoking a cancer, reading a Malenki bit of a book. He had the light on in the auto to viddy by. He took no notice of what Billy Boy and Dim did to your humble narrator. I will not go into what they did, but it was all like panting and thudding against this like background of wiring farm engines and the twittering in the barrel Nagoy branches. You could video a bit of smoky breath in the auto light. This driver turning the pages over quite calm, and they were on to me all the time, oh my brothers, and Billy Boy or Dim, I couldn't say which one said, about enough, Droogie, I should think. Shouldn't you? Then they gave me one final toe-cock on the lid so each, and I fell over and just lay there on the grass. It was cold, but I was not feeling cold. Then they dusted their rookers and put back on their schlemms and tunic, which they had taken off. And then they got back into the auto. Be videoing you some more sometime, Alex, said Billy Boy, and Dim just gave one of his old clowny guffs. The driver finished the page he was reading and put his book away. Then he started the auto, and they were off townwards. My ex-drug and ex-enemy waving. But I just lay there, fagged and shagged. After a bit I was hurting bad, and then the rain started, all icy. I could video no loodies in sight, nor no lights of the houses. Where was I to go, who had no home and not much cutter in my carmines? I cried for myself, boo-hoo-hoo. Then I got up and began walking. On chapter 4 now. I have about 4 chapters left. 4, 5, 6, 7. Home, home, home. It was home I was wanting, and it was home I came to, brothers. I walked through the dark and followed not the town way, but the way where the shoom of a light farm machine had been coming from. This brought me to a sort of village I felt I had visited before, but was perhaps because all the villages looked the same, in the dark especially. Here were houses, and there was a light drinking mesto, and right at the end of the village there was a Maleki cottage on its Arinaki, and I could video its name shining white on the gate home. It said, I was all dripping wet with this icy rain, so that my platies were no longer in the height of fashion, but real miserable and like pathetic, and my luscious glory was a wet, tangled Cali mess all spread over my Gulliver. And I was quite sure there were cuts and bruises all over my lid, so when a couple of my zoobies sort of joggled loose when I touched them with my tongue. Or Yazik, and I was sore all over my plot and very thirsty, so that I kept opening my rot to the cold rain, and my stomach growled grr all the time when not having any pea-shot since morning, and then not very much, oh my brothers. Home, it said, and perhaps here would be some Vec to help. I opened the gate and sort of slithered down the path, the rain like turning to ice, and then I knocked gentle and pathetic on the floor. No Vec came, so I knocked on my leg a bit longer and louder, and then I heard the shoom of Nogas coming to the door, then the door opened and a male galas said, yes, what is it? Oh, I said, please help, I've been beaten up by the police and just left to die on the road. Oh, please give me a drink of something and a sip by the fire, please, sir. The door opened full then, and I could viddy like warm light and a fire going crackle, crackle within. Come in, said this Vec, wherever you are, God help you, you poor victim. Come in and let's have a look at you. So I like staggered in, and it was no big act I was putting on, brothers. I really felt done and finished. This kind Vec put his rookers around my plecos and pulled me into this room where the fire was, and of course I knew right away now where it was and why home on the gate looked so familiar. I looked at this Vec and he looked at me in some sort of way, and I remembered him well, of course. He would not remember me, for in those carefree days I and my so-called Druids did all our bullshit drafting and filling and crassing and maskies, which were real horror show disguises. He was the shortest Vec in middle age, 30, 40, 50, and he had Akis on. Sit down by the fire, he said, and I'll get you some whiskey and warm water. Dear, 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 somebody has been beating you up, and he gave a like tender look in my Gulliver and Litzo. The police, I said, the horrible, ghastly police. Another victim, he said, like sign, a victim of the modern age. I'll go and get you that whiskey, and then I must clean up your wounds a little. And off he went. I had a look round this Malenki comfortable room. It was nearly all books now and fire and a couple of chairs, and you could viddy somehow that there wasn't a woman living there. On the table was a typewriter and a lot of like tumbled papers, and I remember that this Vec was a writer Vec, a Clockwork Orange that had been it. It was funny that stuck in my mind. I must not let on though, for I needed help and kindness now. Those horrible grassy brackens and the terrible white mess though had done that to me, making me need help and kindness now, and forcing me to want to give help and kindness myself, if anybody would take it. Here we are then, said this Vec, returning. He gave me this hot, stimulating glassful to Pete, and it made me feel better, and then he cleaned up these cuts on my lids so. Then he said, you have a nice hot bath, I'll draw it for you, and then you can tell me all about it over a nice hot supper, which I'll get ready while you're having the bath. Oh, my brothers, I could have wept at this kindness, and I think he must have viddied the old tears in my glasses, for he said, there, patting me on the pleco. Anyway, I went up and had this hot bath, and he brought in pajamas and an overgown for me to put on, all warmed by the fire, also a very worn pair of tufels. And now, my brothers, though I was aching and full of pains all over, I thought I would soon feel a lot better. I ate it downstairs and viddied that in the kitchen he had set the table with knives and forks and a fine big loaf of kleb, also a bottle of prima sauce, and soon he served out a nice fry of eggy wags and lomticks of ham and bursting sausages and big bolshy mugs of hot sweet milky chai. It was nice sitting there in the warm eating, and I found I was very hungry, so that after the fry I had to eat lomtok after lomtok with clegg and butter spread with strawberry jam out of a bolshy grape pot. A lot better, I said. How can I ever repay? I think I know who you are, he said. If you are think you are, then you've come, my friend, to the right place. Wasn't that your picture in the papers this morning? Are you the poor victim of this horrible new technique? If so, then you have been sent here by Providence, tortured in prison and thrown out to be tortured by the police. My heart goes out to you, poor boy. Brothers, I could not get a Slavo in, though I had my route wide open to answer his questions. You are not the first to come here in distress, he said. The police are fond of bringing their victims to outskirts of this village, but it is providential that you, who are also another kind of victim, should come here. Perhaps then you have heard of me. I have to be very careful, brothers, I said. I have heard of A Clockwork Orange. I have not read it, but I have heard of it. Ah, he said, and his lips so shone like the sun in his flaming morning glory. Ah, he said, and his lips so shone like the sun in its flaming morning glory. Now tell me about yourself. Little enough to tell you, sir, I said, all humble. There was a foolish and boyish prank my so-called friends persuading or rather forcing me to break into the house of an old Petitza lady, There was no real harm meant. Unfortunately, the lady strained her good old heart in trying to throw me out, though I was quite ready to go of my own accord. And then she died. I was accused of being the cause of her death, so I was sent to prison, sir. Yes, go on. Then I was picked out by the Minister of Interior to have this Ludovico's vetch tried out on me. Tell me all about it, he said, leaning forward eager, his pullover elbows with all strawberry jam on them from the plate I pushed to one side. So I told him all about it. I told him the lot, all my brothers. He was very eager to hear all his gladsies like shoning and his goobers apart while the grease on the plates grew harder and harder. When I had finished, he got up from the table, nodding a lot and going, picking up the plates and other vegetables from the table and taking them to the sink for washing up. I said, I will do that, sir, and gladly. Rest, poor lad, he said, turning the tap on so that all the steam came burping out. You've sinned, I suppose, but your punishment has been out of all proportion. They have turned you into something other than a human being. You have no power of choice any longer. You are committed to socially acceptable acts, a little machine capable only of good. And I see that clearly, that business about the marginal conditionings, music and the sexual act, literature and art, all must be a source now, not of pleasure but of pain. That's right, sir, I said, smoking one of his kind man's cork-tipped cancers. They always bite off too much, he said, drawing a plate like absent-mindedly. But the essential intention is the real sin. A man who cannot choose ceases to be a man. That's what the Charles said, sir, I said. The prison chaplain, Did he? Of course he did. He'd have to. Would he, being a Christian? Well, now, then, he said, still wiping the same plate he'd been wiping 10 minutes ago. We should have a few people in to see you tomorrow. I think you can be used, poor boy. I think that you can help dislodge this overbearing government. To turn a decent young man into a piece of clockwork should not surely be seen as any triumph for any government, save one that boasts of its repressiveness. He was still wiping this same plate. I said, sir, you're still wiping that same plate. I agree with you, sir, about boasting. This government seems to be very boastful. Oh, he said, like videoing this plate for the first time and then putting it down. I'm still not too handy, he said, with domestic chores. My wife used to do them all and leave me to my writing. Your wife, sir, I said, has she gone and left you? I really wanted to know about this wife, remembering very well. Yes, left me, he said, in a loud and bitter galash. She died, you see. She was brutally raped and beaten. The shock was very great. It was in this house. His rookers were trembling, holding a wiping cloth. In that room next door, I had to steel myself to continue to live here. But she would have wished me to stay where her fragment memory still lingers. Yes, poor little girl. I videoed all clearly, my brothers, what had happened that far off Naki, and videoed myself on that job. I began to feel I wanted to sick and pain and the pain started up in my gulliver. This Vec videoed this because my little felt it was all drained of red and red grovy, very pale, and he would be able to video this. You go to bed now, he said kindly. I got the spare room ready. Poor boy, you must have had a terrible time. A victim of the modern age, just as she was. Poor girl. I had a real horror show night's sleep, brothers, with no dreams at all, and all the morning was very clear and like frosty, and there was a very pleasant light vaughn of breakfast frying away down below. It took me some little time to remember where I was, as it always does, but it soon came back to me, and then I felt like warmed and protected. But as I laid there in bed, waiting to be called down to breakfast, it struck me that I ought to get to know the name of this kind protecting me and like motherly vex. So I had a pad around in my Nogas looking for a Clockwork Orange, which would be bound to have his Imya in, he being the author. There was nothing in my bedroom except a bed and a chair and a light, so I ate it next door to this Vex's own room, and there I videoed his wife on the wall. A bullshit blown up photo, so I vowed a monkey bit sick remembering. But there were 2 or 3 shelves of books there too, and there was, as I thought, there must be a copy of Clockwork Orange. And on the back of the book, like on the spine, was the author's Imna, F. Alexander. Good bug, I thought, here's another Alex. Then I leafed through, standing in my pajamas and bare knuckles, but not feeling one monkey bit cold, the cottage being warm all through, and I could not video what the book was about. It seemed written in a very Bazumi-like style, full of ah and oh and that cow, but what seemed to come out of it was that all looties nowadays were being turned into machines, and that they were really you and me and him, and kiss my shories more like a natural growth, like a fruit. F. Alexander seemed to think that we all like grow on what he called the world tree and the world orchard that like Bogger God planted, and we were there because Bogger God had need of us to quench his thirsty love, or some such cow. I didn't like the shoom of this at all, oh my brothers, and wondered how Bazumi this F. Alexander really was, perhaps driven Bazumi by his wife snuffing it. But then he called me down in a like Saint Vax Galas, full of joy and love and all that cow. So down your humble narrator went. You slept long, he said, ladling out boiled eggs and pulling black toast from under the grill. It's nearly 10 already. I've been up hours working. Writing another book, sir. No, not that now, he said, and we sat down nice and droogy to the old crack of eggs and crackle crunch of this black toast. Very milky chai standing by and bullshit great morning mugs. Now, I've been on the phone to various people. I thought he didn't have a phone, I said, spooning egg in and not watching out what I was saying. Why, he said, very alert like some scory animal with an egg spoon in its rooker. Why shouldn't you think I have a phone? Nothing, I said, nothing. I wonder, brothers, how much you remembered of the earlier part of the distant knocking, me coming to the door with the old tale saying to the phone, the doctor, and she saying no phone. He took a very close smile at me, but then went back to being like kind and cheerful and spooning up the old eggy wig, munching away, he said. Yes, I rung up various people who will be interested in your case. You can be a very potent weapon, you see, in ensuring that this present evil and wicked government is not returned in the forthcoming election. The government's big boast, you see, is the way it has dealt with crime these last months. He looked at me very close again over his steaming egg, and I wondered if again he was videoing what part I had so far played in his jizny. But he said, recruiting brutal young roughs for the police, proposing debilitating and will-sapping techniques of conditioning. All these long slavos, brothers, in a like matter, Bazumi look in his glasses. We've seen it all before, he said, in other countries, the thin end of the wedge. Before we know where we are, we shall have the full apparatus of totalitarianism. Dear, I thought, egging away and toast crunching. I said, where do I come into all this, sir? You, he said, still with Bazumi look, are living witness to these diabolical proposals. The people, the common people must know, must see. He got up from his breakfast and started to walk up and down the kitchen from the sink to the larder, saying very grumpy, would they like their sons to become what you, poor victim, have become? Will not the government itself now decide what is and what is not crime and pump out the life and guts will of whoever sees fit to displease the government? He became quieter, but did not go back to his egg. I've written an article, he said, this morning while you were sleeping that will be out in a day or so, together with your unhappy picture. You shall sign it, poor boy. A record of what they have done to you, I said. And what do you get out of all this, sir? I mean, besides the pretty Polly you get for the article, as you call it. I mean, why are you so hot and strong against the government? If I may like so bold to ask you. He gripped the edge of the table and said, gritting his zoobies, which were very caully and all stained with cancer smoke. Some of us have to fight. These are great traditions of liberty to defend. I am no partisan man. Where I see the infamy, I seek to erase it. Party names mean nothing. The tradition of liberty means all. The common people will let it go. Yes, they will sell liberty for a quieter life. That is why they must be prodded. And here, brothers, he picked up a fork and stuck it 2 or 3 razzes into the wall so that it all got bent. Then he threw it on the floor, very kindly. He said, eat well, poor boy, poor victim of the modern world. And I could really quite clear he was going off his Gulliver. Eat my eggs as well. But I said, and what do I get out of this? Do I get curled off of the way I am? Do I find myself able to slushy the old choral symphony without being sick once more? Can I live like a Tex Disney again? What, sir, happens to me? He looked at me, brothers, as if he hadn't thought of that before anyway. It didn't matter compared with liberty and all that cow, and he had a look of surprise in me saying what I said as though I was being like a selfish in wanting something for myself. Then he said, oh, as I say, you're a living witness, poor boy. Eat up all your breakfast and then come and see what I've written, for it's going into the weekly trumpet under your name, you unfortunate victim. Our brothers, what he had written was a very long and very weepy piece of writing. As I read it, I felt very sorry for the poor Malkick who was governing about his sufferings, and how the government had sapped his will, and how it was up to all the Ludis to not let such a rotten and evil government rule them again. And then, of course, I realized that the poor suffering Malkick was none other than your honorable narrator. Very good, I said. Real horror show. Written well thou hast, oh sir. And he looked at me very narrow and said, what? It was like he had not slooshed me before. Oh, that I said. It's what we call Natsat talk. All these teens use that, sir. So then he iddied off to the kitchen to wash the dishes, and I was left in these borrowed night platties and twofuls, waiting to have done to me what was going to be done to me, because I had no plans for myself, oh my brothers. And I was left in these borrowed night platties and twofuls, waiting to have done to me what was going to be done to me, because I had no plans for myself, oh my brothers. You have to have plans for yourself, man. While the great F. Alexander was in the kitchen, a dingle-dangling came out the door. Ah, he creached, coming out, wiping his rookers. It will be these people, I'll go. So we went and let them in, a kind of rumbling ha-ha talk of halo and filthy weather and how things are in the hallway. Then the idiot into the room with the fire and the books and the article about how I had suffered, videoing me and going ah as they did it. There were 3 Ludies. F. Alexander gave me their innuos. Z. Dolan was a very wheezy, smoky kind of vet, coughing casual with the end of cancer in his rot, splishing ash all down his platties and then brushing it away like very impatient rookers. He was a Malenki round vet, fat with big, thick framed Akis on. Then there was something Rubenstein, a very tall and polite Chalovic with a real gentleman's glass, very starry with a light eggy beard. And lastly, there was D.B. da Silva, who was like scary in his movements and had this strong bond of scent coming from him. They all had a real horror show look at me and seemed like overjoyed with what they videoed. Z. Dolan said, all right, Ed, what a superb device he can be, this boy. If anything, of course, he could for preference look even iller and more zombie-ish than he does. Anything for the cause. No doubt we can think of something. I didn't like that crack about zombie-ish, brothers, and so I said, what goes on, braddies? What doubts thou in mind for that little drug have? And then F. Alexander switched in with, strange, that manner of voice pricks me. We've come into contact before, I'm sure we have. And he brooded like frowning, I would have to watch this, oh my brothers, D.P. da Silva said. Public meetings, Manny, to exhibit you at public meetings will be a tremendous help. And of course, the newspaper angle was all tied up. At real life is the approach. We must inflame our hearts. He showed his 30-odd zubies very wide against his dark-colored lids, so he looking a Malenki bit like some foreigner, I said. Nobody would tell me what I get out of all this. Tortured in jail, thrown out of my home by my own parents and their filthy, overbearing lodger, beaten by old men and nearly killed by militants. What is it to become of me? The Rubenstein vet came in with. You will see, boy, that the party will not be ungrateful. Oh no, at the end of it all, there will be some very acceptable little surprise for you. Just you wait and see. There's only one vesh I require, I creached out, and that's to be normal and healthy as I was in the starry days, having my Malenki bit of fun with real droogs and not those who just call themselves that and are really more like traitors. Can you do that, eh? Can any vec restore me to what I was? That's what I want. That's what I want to know. Casho, called Z. Dolan, a martyr to the cause of liberty, he said. You have your part to play and don't forget it. Meanwhile, we shall look after you. And he began to stroke my left rooker as if I was like an idiot, grinning in a bazooning way, I creached. Stop treating me like a thing that's like got to be just used. I'm not an idiot you can't impose on. You stupid brocknies. Ordinary pre-stoopniks are stupid, but I'm not ordinary, nor am I dim. Do you slooshy? Dim, said F. Alexander, like musing. Dim, that was a name somewhere, Dim. Hey, I said, what's Dim got to do with it? What do you know about Dim? Then I said, oh, Bog, help us. I didn't like the looking F. Alexander's lazy. I made for the door, wanting to go upstairs and get my patties and idiot off. I could almost believe, said F. Alexander, showing his stained zubi, his glassy man, but such things are impossible, for by Christ, if he were, I'd tear him, I'd split him, by God, yes, so I would. There, said D.B. Zavilla, stroking his chest like he was a doggy to calm him down. It's all in the past. It was other people altogether. We must help this poor victim. That's what we must do now. Remember the future and our cause. I'll just get my platties, I said, to stare for. That is to stay closed, and then I'll be idioting off. That is to say closed, and then I'll be idioting off all on my Arinaki. I mean, my gratitude for all, but I have my own G's need to live. Because, brothers, I wanted to get out of here. It's real scory, but Z. Dolan said, ah, no. We have you, friend, and we keep you. You come with us. Everything will be all right, you see. And he came up to me like to grab hold of my rooker again. Then, brothers, I thought of fight, but thinking of fight made me want to collapse and sick, so I just stood. And then I saw this like madness in F. Alexander's glasses, and and said, "Whatever you say, I'm in your rookers, but let's get it started and all over, brothers, because what I wanted now was to get out of this mess to call home." I was beginning not to like the look of the glazies of ex-Alexander, one Malenki bit. "Good," said Rubenstein. "Get dressed and let's get started." "Dim, dim, dim," F. Alexander kept saying in a like low mutter. What or who was his dim? I iddied upstairs real scurry and dressed in near 2 seconds flat. Then I was out with these three and into an auto, Rubenstein one side of me and Z. Dolan coughing casual the other side. D.B. De Silva doing the driving into the town and into a flat block, not really all that distant from what had used to be my own flat block or home. "Come, boy, out," said Z. Dolan, coughing to make the cancer end in his rock glow red like some Malenki furnace. "This is where you shall be installed." So we iddied in, and there was like another of these dignity of labor veshes on the wall of the vestibule, and we upped in the lift, brothers, and then went into a flat like all the flats of all the flat blocks of the town. Very, very Malenki, with 2 bedrooms and 1 live eat workroom. The table of all this covered with books and papers and inks and bottles and all that cow. "Here's your new home," said De Silva. "Settle here, boy. Food is in the food cupboard, pajamas on the drawer. Rest, rest, perturbed spirit." I said, not quite ponying that. "All right," said Rubenstein with his starry glass. "We are now leaving you. Work has to be done. We'll be with you later. Occupy yourself as best as you can." "One thing," coughed Z. Dolan casual. "You saw what stirred in the tortured memory of our friend E. Alexander. Was it by any chance, that is to say, did you? I think you know what I mean. We won't let it go any further." "I've paid," I said. "Bog knows I paid for what I did. I paid not only like for myself, but for those Brackneys too, that call themselves my drugs. I felt violent, so then I felt a bit sick. I'll lay down a bit," I said. "I've been through terrible, terrible times." "You had," said D.B. De Silva, showing all his 32 zubies. "You do that." So they left me, brothers. They iddied off about their business, which I took to be about politics and all that cow, and I was on the bed, all on my Arinagi, with everything very, very quiet. I just lay there with my zabogs kicked off my nogas and my tie loose, like all bewildered and not knowing what sort of a jizny I was going to live now. And all sorts of light pictures kept us passing through my Gulliver, of different Chelovics I'd meet at school and in the Stajan, and the different veshes that had happened to me, and how there was not one Vec you could trust in the whole Bolshoi world. And then I like dozed off, brothers. When I woke up, I could slushy music coming out of the wall, real grumpy, and it was that had dragged me out of my bit of like sleep. It was a symphony that I knew, real horror show, but had not slushy for many a year, namely the Symphony No. 3 of the Danish Vec Otto Skadalig. A very grumpy and violent piece, especially in the first movement, which was what was playing now. I slushied for 2 seconds and like interest and joy, but then it all came over me, the start of the pain and sickness, and I began to grow deep down in my kishkas. And then there I was, me who had loved music so much, crawling off the bed and going oh 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 to myself, and then bang bang banging on the wall, screeching stop stop, turn it off. But it went on and it seemed to be like louder, so I crashed at the wall till my knuckles were all red and grovy and torn skin creaking and creaking, but the music did not stop. Then I thought I had to get away from it, so I lurched out of the Malenki bedroom and iddied scurry to the front door of the flat. This had been locked from the outside and I could not get out. And all the time the music got more and more grumpy, like it was all a deliberate torture. Oh, my brothers. So I stuck my little fingers so deep in my ukus, but the trombones and kettle drums blasted through grumpy enough, so I creached again for them to stop and went hammer, hammer, hammer on the wall, but it made no one Malenki bit of difference. Or what am I to do? I boo-hooed to myself. Oh, Bog in heaven help me. I was like wandering all over the flat in pain and sickness, trying to shut out the music, and like groaning deep out of my guts. And then on top of the pile of books and papers and all that cow that was on the table in the living room, I viddied what I had to do and what I had wanted to do until those old men in the public biblio and then Dim and Billy Boy disguised as roses stopped me. And that was to do myself in, to snuff it, to blast off forever out of this wicked and cruel world. What I viddied was a slow death on the cover of a like pamphlet, even though it was only death to the government. And like it was fate, there was another like Malenki booklet which had an open window on the cover, and it said, "Open the window to fresh air, fresh ideas, a new way of living." And so I knew that was like telling me to finish it all off by jumping out. One moment of pain, perhaps, and then sleep forever and ever and ever. The music was still pouring in all brass and drums, and the violins miles up to the wall. The window in the room where I had laid down was open. I eddied to it and viddied a fair drop to the autos and buses and walking Chelovics below. I reached out to the world, goodbye, goodbye, may Bog forgive you for a ruined life. Then I got on the seal, the music blasting away to my left, and I shut my glasses and felt the cold wind on my lids, so then I jumped. Oh shit. 2 more chapters, we already jumped though. I'm on chapter 6, I think I could finish that like in 20 minutes maybe. I don't know. This video is gonna be close to 2 hours. Back. My back gonna be strained. Don't really know. So come on, Alex. He didn't have to kill himself. He was so young. It was just like a fucked up thing. Like, he gets out, he tries to go to the library, these old men, because some bullshit he did in the past. And then he fucking, cops try to come get him, ends up being just 15-year-old. When you're 15, I can't even call them, it sounds funny when you hear enemy when they're only 15. That's my enemy. Like, it sounds so stupid if you think about it. Like, we're not even at war, but you have enemies on the street. So as like 15-year-old, which is so crazy now that I'm 31 to hear that. But they become policemen, and your enemy and somebody who you used to do crimes with, as you consider a friend. But when you guys are doing crimes together, friends don't really make other people or encourage other people to not get ahead in life. You know what I'm saying? You gotta push each other to get ahead. Real friends want other friends to succeed in life, you know? You realize that, you know, as you get older. But Alex, he didn't allow himself to get to that point to really realize it. All this stuff is in the moment. It just seems very, you think you're gonna come home, he's changed, you know? But it's, at the same time, you're having to deal with the outside world. Like, even though you change, but people's points of views about you, or maybe people's lives have gotten a little more harder. They become a little more, you know, are playing a different role in life, you know. And his friends decide, he gets beat up by the police, and he ends up going to a place where he was part of, you know, of the destruction and the pain that this guy who's trying to help him. This guy's trying to help him. He's like, man, I fucking robbed this place before, and me and my buddies beat the man and beat his wife, and I don't even think the husband was there. I think they just beat the wife and they raped the wife, and that messed up her brain further. That affected her life and its outcome. And then he just like, what the fuck? Like, how do I get away from all the bad I've done? And like, the conscience just eating at you. So, but for a 17-year-old, 18-year-old kid to not feel like you're still worthy of life after all that, you know, and to jump, crazy. It's a long video, but it's okay to do a little interlude. I think it's called an interlude. Maybe I'm wrong. Interlude, I've got that from music. Back then, you know, back then, like 10 years ago, maybe like 12 years ago, things were on CDs and you could read the back of it. And, you know, it usually had the word interlude on there, so you could kind of learn. Clockwork, this book is pretty good, man. I jumped on my brothers and I found the sidewalk hard, but I did not snuff it, oh no. If I had snuffed it, I would not be here to write what I have written. It seems that the jump was not from a big enough height to kill, but I cracked my back and my wrists and my noggins and felt very bolshy pain before I passed out, brothers. With astonished and surprised little Chalovics in the streets looking at me from above. Just before I passed out, I vidi clear that not one Calovic in the whole horrid world was for me, and that music through the wall had all been like arranged by those who were supposed to be my like new Jews, and that it was some vash like this that they wanted for their horrible, selfish, and boastful politics. All that was in a like human millionth part of one of the minuta before I threw over the world and at the sky and the littles of the starry Chalovics that were above me. I kind of thought so too, like they were just trying to experiment on them, trying to see, you know, because where I was when I came back to Disney after a long black gap of it might have been a million years was a hospital, all white, and with this vaunt of hospitals you get, all like sour and smug and clean. These antiseptic vegetables you get in hospitals should have a real horrible vaunt of like frying onions or of flowers. I came very slow back to knowing who I was, and I was all bound up in white, and I could not feel anything in my plot, pain or sensation or any vesh at all. All around my Gulliver was a bandage, and there were 2 bits of stuff like stuck to my lid, so when my rookers were all in bandages, and like bits of stick were like fixed to my fingers, like on it might be flowers to make them grow straight. And my poor old noggles were all straightened out too, and it was all bandages and wire and cages into my right rooker, and the pleco was red grovy dripping from a jar upside down, but I could not feel anything. Oh my brothers, there was a nurse sitting by my bed, and she was reading some book that was all like very dim print, and you could pity it was a story because of a lot of inverted commas, and she was like breathing hard over it, so it must have been a story about the old in out in out. She was a real horror show devaka, this nurse, with a very red rot and a like long lashes over her glasses, and on her like very stiff uniform you could pity she had very horror show grooties. I said to her, what gives, oh my little sister, come down and have a nice lay down with your malenki droog in this bed. But the Slovos didn't come out horror show at all, it being as though my rot was all stiffened up. I could feel with my yazjik that some of my zoobies were no longer there. But this nurse like jumped and drooped her book on the floor and said, oh, you've recovered consciousness. I'm gonna plug in my phone so, because I know I'm like under 10%, but as long as it doesn't die on me. That was like a big rotful for Malenki Patissa like her, and I tried to say so, but the Slovas came out like She ate it off and left me on my Adi knocking. I could vidi now that I was in a Malenki room of my own. Not in one of these long wards like I had been in a very little mouth kick full of coughing, dying starry vex all around to make you want to get well and fit again. Had been like a diphtheria I had then, oh my brothers. It was like now as though as I could not hold to being conscious all that long, because I was like asleep again almost right away. Very scory, but in a minute or two I was sure that this nurse Petitza had come back and had brought Chalovics and white coats with her, and they were bidding me very frowning and going, that's your home narrator. And with them I was sure there was the old Charles from the stage I governed. Oh my son, breathing a light, very stale Vanna whiskey onto me, then saying, but I would not stay, oh no, I could not in no wise subscribe to what those Brackens are going to do to other poor pre-stoop picnics. So I got out and am preaching sermons now about it all. My beloved son and JC. I woke up again later on, and who should I vidi there round the bed but the 3 from whose flat I had jumped out, namely B.D. De Silva and something Rubenstein and Z. Dolan friend. One of these vex was saying, but I cannot vidi your slushy horror show. Which one? Friend, little friend, this Galas was saying. The people are on fire with indignation. You have killed those horrible, boastful villains. Chances of re-election. They will go and will go forever and ever. You have served liberty well. I try to say, if I had died, it would have been even better for you political Brackens, would it not, pretending and treacherous drugs as you are. But all that came out was and one of these 3 seemed to hold out a lot of bits cut from gazettas, and what I could vidi was a horrible picture of me all crovy on a stretcher being carried off, and I seemed to remember a kind of popping of lights which must have been photographers' vex. Out of one glass I could read like headlines which were sort of trembling in the rooker of the Chalovic that held them. Like, boy victim of criminal reform scheme and government as murderer. And then there was like a picture of a vec that looked familiar to me, and it said, out. That would be the Minister of Interior. And the nurse Petitza said, you shouldn't be exciting him like that. You shouldn't be doing anything that will make him upset. Now come on, let's have you out. I tried to say, out, but it was again. Anyway, these 3 political vex went, and I went too, only back to the land, back to the all blackness lit up by the odd dreams, which I didn't know whether they were dreams or not. Oh my brothers, like for instance, I had this idea of my whole plot or body being like emptied of, as it might be dirty water and then filled up again with clean. And then there were really lovely and horror show dreams of being in some Vex auto that had been crasted by me and driving up and down the world all on my Arinaki, running looties down and hearing them creeps. They were dying, and me no pain and no sickness. And also there were dreams of doing the old in and out with the vodkas, forcing like them down on the ground and making them have it, and everybody standing around clapping their rookers and cheering like Bazumi. Then I woke up again, and it was my P and come to vidi their ill son, my boo-hooing real horror show. I could cover it a lot better now. I could say, well, what gives? What makes you think you are all like welcome? My papa said in a like ashamed way. You were in the paper, son. It said they had done great wrong to you. It said how the government drove you out to try to do yourself in. And it was our fault too in a way, son. Your home's your home. When all is said and done, son. And my mom kept on going boo-hoo-hoo and looking ugly as kiss my shari. So I said, and how beeth thy new son Joe, well and healthy and prosperous? I trust and pray, my mom said. Oh, Alex, My papa said, oh, very awkward thing, son. He got into a bit of trouble with the police and was done by the police. Really, I said, really, such a good sort of Chalavic and all. May's proper, I'm honest. Minding his own business he was, said P, and the police told him to move on. Waiting at a corner he was, son, to see a girl he was going to meet, and they told him to move on, and he had said he had rights like everybody else. And then they sort of fell on top of him and hit him down about cruel. Terrible, I said, really terrible, and where's the poor boy now? Ow, boo-hoo, gone back, ow, gone back home. Yes, said Dad, he's gone back to his own hometown to get better. They had to give his job here to somebody else, so now I said, you're willing for me to move back in again and things be like they were before. Yes, son, said Papa. Please, son. I'll consider it, I said. I think about it real careful. Ow, went my mom. I'll shut it, I said. I'll give you something proper to yell and creature about. Kick your zoobies and I will. And my brothers saying that made me feel like a malenky bit better, as if all like fresh red gravy was flowing all through my plot. That was something I had to think about. It was like as though to get better I had to get worse. That's no way to speak to your mother, son, said my papa. After all, she brought you into the world. Yes, I said. And the right grassy Vonnie world, too. I shut my glasses tight and like pain. I said, go away now. I'll think about coming back, but things will have to be very different. Yes, son, said my P. Anything you say, you have to make up your mind. I said, who's to be boss? Ow, my mom went on. What a... Come on, Alex. Very good, said my papa. Things will be as you like. Only get well. When they had gone, I laid and thought a bit about different ventures, like all different pictures passing through my Gulliver. And when the nurse Batista came back in like and strained into the sheets on the bed, I said to her, how long is it I've been in here? A week or so, she said. And what have they been doing to me? Well, she said, you were all broken up and bruised and had sustained severe concussion and had lost a lot of blood. They have had to pull all right, haven't they? They have had to pull all that right, haven't they? But I said, has anyone been doing anything with my Gulliver? What I mean is, have they been playing around with inside like my brain? Whatever they done, she said, it's all be for the best. But a couple of days later, a couple of like Dr. Vex came in, both youngish Vex with these very slatky smiles, and they had like a picture book with them. One of them said, we want you to have a look at these and to tell us what you think about them, all right? What giveth, O little droogies? I said, what new bazoomy idea does thou in mind have? So they both had a like embarrassed schmeck at that, and then they sat down either side of the bed and opened up this book. On the first page, there was a like photograph of a bird nest full of eggs. Yes, one of the Dr. Vex said. A bird nest, I said, full of eggs, very nice. And what would you like to do about it? The other one said. Oh, I said, smash them, pick up the lot and like throw them against a wall or a cliff or something, and then video them all. Smash up real horror show. Good, good, they both said, and then the page was turned. It was like a picture of one of those bullshit gray birds called peacocks with all its tail spread out in all colors in a very boastful way. Yes, said one of these Vex. I would like, I said, to pull out like all those feathers in its tail and slushy it, creech blue murder for being so boastful. Good, they both said. Good, 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 and they went on turning the pages. There were like pictures of real horror show Davakas, and I said I would like to give them the old in and out with lots of ultra violence. There were like pictures of Chalavics being given the boot, straight in the litzel, and all red grovy everywhere, and I said I would like to be in on that. And there was a picture of the old Nagoy Droog of the prison. Charlie's carrying his cross up a hill, and I said I would like to have the old hammer and nails. Good, good, I said. What is all this? Deep hypnopadia or some such slavu, said one of these two Vex. You seem to be cured. Cured, I said. Me tied down to this bed like this, and you say cured? Kiss my cherries is what I say. Wait, the other said. It won't be long now. So I waited. Oh, my brothers, I got a lot better munching away at eggy wigs and lomticks of toast and peating bullshit great mugs of milk chai. And then one day they said I was going to have a very, very special visitor, who, I said while they straightened the bed and combed my luscious glory from me having the bandage off now from my Gulliver and the hair growing again. You'll see, they said, and I videoed all right at 2:30 of the afternoon. They were like all photographers and men from gazettes with notebooks and pencils and all that gal. And brothers, they near trumpeted a bullsheen fanfare of this great and important Vec who was coming to video your humble narrator. And then he came, and of course it was none other than the Minister of Interior, inferior, dressed in the height of fashion, and with this very upper class ha galas, flash bang went the cameras when he put on his rooker to me to shake it. I said, wow, what giveth then, old droogie? Nobody seemed to quite pony that, but somebody said in a lark, harsh glass, be more respectful, boy, in addressing the minister. Yarbles, I said, like snarling like a droogie, bullshit great, yard blockos to thee and thine. All right, said inferior, interior, one very scory. He speaks to me as a friend, don't you, son? I'm everyone's friend, I said, except to my enemies. And who are your enemies, said the minister, while the Gazette of X went scribble, scribble, scribble. Tell us that, my boy. All who do me wrong, I said, are my enemies. While said the inf men sitting down by my bed. I and the government of which I am a member want you to regard us as friends. Yes, friends. We put you right, yes. You are getting the best of treatment. We never wished you harm, but there are some who did and do, and I think you know who those are. All who do me wrong, I said, are my enemies. Yes, 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 he said. There are certain men who wanted to use you, yes, use you for political ends. They would have been glad, yes, glad for you to be dead, for they thought they couldn't then blame it all on the government. I think you know who those men are. I did not, I said, like, look of them. There was a man, said the Intifiman, called F. Alexander, a writer of submersive literature, who has been howling for your blood. He has been mad with desire to stick a knife in you, but you're safe from him now. We put him away. He was supposed to be like a drug, yes, said like a mother to me, was what he was. He found out that you had done wrong to him, at least, said the men, very, very score. He believed you had done wrong. He formed this idea in his mind that you had been responsible for the death of someone near and dear to him. What you mean, I said, is that he was told? What you mean, I said, is that he was told. He had this idea, said the men. He was a menace. We put him away for his own protection, and also, he said, for yours. Kind, I said, most kind of thou. When you leave here, said men, you will have no worries. We shall see to everything. A good job on a good salary because you are helping us. Am I said. We always help our friends, don't we? And then he took my rooker, and some vet creech smiled. And then I smiled like Bazumni without thinking. The flash, flash, crack, flash, bang. There were pictures being taken of me in the intimate film. All droogy together. A good boy, said this great child. A good boy, and now see a present. What was brought in out, brothers, was a big shiny box, and I very clear what sort of a vesh it was. It was a stereo. It was put down next to the bed and opened up, and some vec plugged its lead into the wall socket. What shall it be? Asked the vec with Akis on his nose, and he had in his rugger some lovely shiny sleeves full of music. Mozart, Beethoven, Schoenberg, Karl Orff. The ninth, I said, the glorious ninth. And the ninth it was, oh my brothers. Everybody began to leave, nice and quiet, while I lay there with my glasses closed, slushing the lovely music. The men said, good, good boy, patting me on the pleasure, then he iddied off. Only one vec was left, saying, sign here, please. I opened my glasses up to sign, not knowing what I was signing, not, oh my brothers, carrying either. Then I was left alone with the glorious ninth of Ludwig van. Oh, it was gorgiosity and yum yum yum. When it came to the scherzo, I could video myself very clear running and running on like very light and mysterious nagas, carving the whole litso of the creaking world with my cutthroat Britva. And then there was a slow movement and the lovely last singing movement still to come. I was cured, all right. Page 200, I got the last, yeah, just got 12 pages, so, man, it's pretty crazy how it was like a political thing. It was a political thing, and who knows if that Alexander, the guy that Lewis and his friends, Dim and Georgie and maybe, I think Pete, the four of them, they had beat up the lady, stole the stuff, and like raped the lady, and she ended up killing herself, I guess. And so Alexander found out, which is the husband, and now the minister said they put Alexander in jail because he wants to kill him, which I guess could be true, but it just seems like both sides are trying to use him, and maybe they put Alexander away for trying to bring down their system. Or maybe he really did forgive. It's kind of crazy he would just give up him trying to like save the kid and like bring down the government's way of doing things, and then become just wanting to go after Alex, so he kind of became a monster, if that is true, you know what I'm saying? What is it going to be then, eh? There was me, your humble narrator, and my three droogs, that is Len, Rick, and Bully. Bully being called Bully because of his bolshy big neck and very grumpy galas, which was just like some bolshy great bull bellowing we were sitting in the Korova milk bar making up our razoo docs, what to do with the evening, and flip dark chill winter bastard, though dry. All around were Chalovics well away on milk, plus Valicet and Symptomus and Drink Room and other veshes which take you far, far away from this wicked and real world into the land to Fitty Bog. And all his holy angels and saints, and your left sabag with lights bursting and spurting all over your mosque. What we were repeating was the old Malacca with knives in it, as we used to say, to sharpen you up and make you ready for a bit of dirty 20 to 1, but I told you all that before. So he just pretty much said hanging out with people drinking the milk at the milk bar, plus Valicet, which sounds like a pill, and Synthamesk, which sounds also something synthetic, and Drenchrome and other veshes which take you far, far away from this wicked and real world into the land to Vidi Bog and all its holy angels and saints, and your left's the bog with lights bursting and spreading all over your mazi. So I'm skipping back. I'm tune out. I just want to read that over because I remember seeing those words and I guess that meant drugs. So it just seems like he's getting back into trouble again. We were dressed in the height of fashion, which in those days was these very wide trousers and a very loose black shiny leather like jerkin over an open neck shirt with a like scarf tucked in. At this time too it was the height of fashion to use old Brivka on the Gulliver, so that most of the Gulliver was like bald and there was hair only on the sides. But it was always the same on the old Nogas, real horror show, bolshy, big boots for kicking litzos in. What's it going to be then, eh? I was like the oldest of we four, and they all looked up to me as their leader, but I got the idea sometimes that Bully had the thought in the Gulliver that he would like to take over, this being because of his bigness and Gronky Gallas that bellowed out of him when he was on the warpath. But all the ideas came from your humble, oh my brothers, and also there was this Vesh that I had been famous and had my picture in articles and all that cow in the gazettas. Also I had by far the best job of all we four, being in the National Grandma Disc archives on the music side with a real horror show carman full of pretty Polly at the week's end and a lot of nice free discs from my own Maliki South on the side. This evening in Korova there was a fair number of Vex and Titsas and Avakas and Malchiks smacking and peating away and cutting through the governing and the burbling of the Inlanders with their gore, Fally Took and the warm sprays and Phil Tip slaughter bowls. And all that cow you could slooshy a pop disc on the stereo, this being Ned Achimoto singing The Day, yeah, that day. At the corner were three Davakas dressed in the height of Natsa fashion, that is to say, long uncombed, hair dyed, white and false grudy sticking out a meter or more in very, very tight, short skirts with all like frothy white underneath. And Bully kept saying, hey, get in there, we could three of us. Old Len is not interested. Leave old Len alone with his God. And Len kept saying, Yarbles, where is the spirit of all for one and one for all? Eh, boy? Sonny and I felt both very, very tired and also full of tingling energy. And I said, out. Where to, said Rick, who has a little like a frog's. Oh, you just video what's doing in the great outside, I said. But some of my brothers I felt very bored and a bit hopeless and had been feeling that a lot these days. So I turned to the Chalovik nearest me on the big plush seat that ran right round the whole mesto, a Chalovik that is, who was burbling away under the influence. And I fisted him real scory, ack, in the belly, but he felt it not, brothers, only burbling away with his cart virtue, wherein top tails lieth the poppy popcorn. So we scattered out in the big winter knocky. We walked down Margarita Boulevard, and there were no militants patrolling that way, so we met a starry vet coming away from a new kiosk where he had been capeting a gazetta. I say to Bully, all right, Bully boy, thou canst if thou like wishes. More and more these days I had been just giving the orders and standing back to vidi them being carried out. So Bully cracked into him, and the other two tripped him and kicked him, smacking away while he was down, and then let him crawl off to where he lived, like whimpering to himself. Bully said, how about a nice yummy glass of something to keep out the cold, oh Alex, for we were not too far from the Duke of New York. The other two nodded, yes, but all looked at me to vidi whether that was all right. I nodded too, and so off we iddied. Inside the snug there were these starry patistas or sharps or babukas you will remember from the beginning, and they all started on their evening, lads. God bless you, boys. Best lads living, that's what you are. Waiting for us to say, what is it going to be, girls? Bully rang the coal, and a waiter came in, rubbing his rookers on his grassy apron. Cut her on the table, Droogie, said Bully, pulling out his own rattling and chinking mount of dang. Scotchman for us, and the same for the old babukas, eh? And then I said, to hell. Let them buy their own. I don't know what it was, but these last days I'd become like mean. There had come into my Gulliver a like desire to keep all my pretty Polly to myself, to like hoard it all up for some reason. Bully said, what gives, Bratty? What's coming over old Alex? How the hell, I said, I don't know what it is. I don't like just throwing away my hard-earned pretty Polly, that's what it is. Earn, said Rick, earn. It doesn't have to be earned as well. Though no, it's old drag as well, though no, it's old druggy. Took, that's all. Just took, like, and he smacked real grumpy, and I vidi one or two of his zoobies weren't all that horror show. I said, I got some thinking to do. But Viddy and these babukas looking all eager like for some free elk. I like shrugged my plecos and pulled out my own cutter from my trouser carman notes, a coin, and all mixed together and plocked it tinkle crackle on the table. Scotchman all around, right, said the waiter, but for some reason I said, no, boy. For me making one small beer, right? And said, this I do not much go for, and he began to put his rooker on my Gulliver like kidding I must have fever, but I like snarled doggy-wise for him to give over scory. All right, Drug, he said, as thou like sayest. But Bully was still having a smile with his rod open at something that had come out of my Carmen with the pretty paw that I put on the table. He said, well, we never knew. Give me that, I snarled and grabbed it, scory. I couldn't explain how it had got there, brothers, but it was a photograph I had scissored out of the old Gazette, and it was of a baby. It was of a baby girl named Goo with all Malacco dribbling from his rod and looking up and like smacking at everybody, and was on the go, and his flesh was like, and all folds with being a very fat baby. There was then like a bit of ha struggling to get hold of this bit of paper from me. So I had to snarl again at them, and I grabbed the photo and tore it up into tiny, teeny pieces and let it fall like a bit of snow on the floor. The whiskey came in, and then the starry Babuka said, good health, lads. God bless you, boys. The best lads living, that's what you are. And all that cow. And one of them who was all lines and wrinkles and no zoobies and a shrunken old rot said, don't tear up money, son. If you don't need it, give it them as does, which was very bold and forward of her. But Rick said, money that was not Obabuka. It was a picture of a dear little itsy-witsy bit of a baby, I said. I'm getting just that bit tired that I am. It's you who's the babies, you lot, scoffing and grinning. All you can do is smack and give people bullshit cowardly talkocks when they can't give them back. Bully said, well, now, we've always thought it was you who was the king of that, and also the teacher. Not well, that's the trouble with the old droogie. I videoed the sloppy glass of beer I had on the table in front of me and felt like all vomity within, so I went, poured all the frothy Vonnie cowl over the floor. One of the starry petites said, waste not, want not. I said, look, droogies, listen, tonight I'm somehow just not in the mood. I know not why or how it is, but there it is. You three go your own ways this night, wise, leaving me out. Tomorrow we shall meet, same place, same time, me hoping to be like a lot better. Oh, said Bully, right, sorry I am. But you could video a light gleam in his glasses because now he would be taking over for this Naki. Power, everybody like wants power. We can postpone till tomorrow, said Bully. What we in mind had, namely that bit of shop crossing in Gargan Street, flip horror show takings there, droop for the having. Power, everybody like wants power. We can postpone till tomorrow, said Bully, what we in mind had, namely, that bit of shop crafting in Gargan Street. Flip horror show takings there, drug for the having. No, I said, you postpone nothing. You just carry on in your own like style. Now, I said, I ate off, and I got up from my chair. Where to then, asked Rick. That no, I not, I said, just to be on like my own and sort things out. You could video the old babukas were real puzzled at me going out like that and like all morose and not the bright and smack Malkawick you will remember. But I said, to hell, and scattered out all of my Adinaki into the street. It was dark and there was a wind sharp as a Nas getting up, and there were very, very few looties about. There were these patrol